who are here in our midst. I thank everybody, members of the National Assembly that are with us. I want to also recognize and thank the representatives and the union itself, Academic Staff Union of Universities, for the very vital role that they have played and they are still playing. We at TETFund, we owe a lot to ASU, and it's very encouraging that they are here with us today. Please enjoy as we celebrate. I also want to urge us all, please stay behind for dinner to round up this 10th year anniversary. Thank you, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, the chairman, but just academia. We're celebrating, contributing our contributions to the entire national. For that, can we have the documentary play? This documentary will take us through the journey in the last decade. Can we have it now?
Education, they say, is the bedrock of every nation. Well, at TETFund, we live and breathe for the attainment of quality education across public tertiary institutions in Nigeria. Indeed, it is the word on everyone's lips that if not for TETFund. That being said, TETFund is 10 years, and to commemorate this landmark achievement is this masterpiece that showcases our valuable contribution to the nation's educational sector. It's another chapter in the annals of TETFund as the world-class interventionist agency in Nigeria celebrates our 10 years of existence.
For the longer term, we have to improve the standards of our education.
For over a decade, the federal government, through the instrumentality of TETFund, has played a pivotal role in Nigeria's tertiary education sector by providing focused and transformative intervention in public tertiary institutions through funding and effective project management. In its formative days, TETFund originated from the then ETF, the Education Trust Fund, a dream nurtured and conceptualized by its founding fathers, ASU.
This was when the military were in control, and there were challenges as to the funding of tertiary education system in the country. And our union, ASU, was struggling to see that the government play its role, the responsibility of funding
The government heralded an emergence of the Education Tax Fund Initiative, ETF, established as an intervention agency under the Education Tax Act No. 7 of 1993 and amended by the Education Tax Act No. 40 of 1998.
That proposal actually was made, and a draft law was made and presented to the government. They accepted the idea, but they reduced the percentage to 2%. And we were really not bothered about the reduction of the percentage, but we know that if the money will be used effectively, it will make a difference.
Basically driven to manage a 2% of education tax imposed on companies operating in Nigeria and to disburse the funds to federal, state, and local government educational institutions, including primary and secondary schools.
But the principle is that TETFund is coming up as an intervention fund. Most of the Nigerian rulers today and those in governance, they think TETFund is there to fund tertiary education in Nigeria. That's not what TETFund has been developed or created for. They're supposed to give supplementary funds to the tertiary institutions where there is budgetary constraint. That's the principle. But unfortunately, this principle has been violated. Today, TETFund, not only plays the role of a major funder of tertiary education system in the country, but also bear the burdens of also establishing new universities and doing other special projects that were not envisaged at the beginning of that history. So, no doubt, the existence of TETFund is worth it, irrespective of these challenges.
Seen as an all-comers affair, this reduced the expected impact of the original concept in improving the quality of education in tertiary institutions in Nigeria. Hence, the Education Tax Fund Act No. 7 of 1993 was repealed and replaced with the Tertiary Education Trust Fund Act 2011 that gave birth to TETFund.
The beauty of it is we have seen the transition from 1999 when the funds were applied, when the Board of Trustees emerged. We've seen the achievements. Although initially up to 2011, the funds were applied widely, including even the basic subsector that is being funded by UBE. Now that changed with the emergence of Tertiary Education Trust Fund.
With a law that stipulates that 2% education tax accrued by the Federal Inland Revenue Service be applied with emphasis on public tertiary institutions in a 2-1-1 ratio, with 50% for universities, 25% for polytechnics, and the other 25% for colleges of education.
We came into existence courtesy of an innovative idea of having a non-budgetary funding window for public tertiary institutions, and precisely the universities, the Polytechnic and the College of Education, owned by federal and state governments.
Indeed, it is safe to say TETFund is a trailblazer in the nation's education sector.
It's been 10 years, yes, but it's also been very remarkable, very impactful. TETFund has lived up to the expectations of its founders, of those who conceived the idea.
Generally, when you go to universities today, the major project you have are TETFund, and I think they have done relatively well in those areas. Yes.
TETFund has been the only funding agency of projects in all universities now.
They have done exceptionally well. Like I always say, without TETFund, where would we be?
Brick by brick, we have built our own legacy across Nigeria's tertiary institutions with a resounding applause in our quest for reforms. This encapsulates institutionalization of research and development, provision of essential physical infrastructure and equipment for learning and teaching, as well as mainstreaming research and publication, promoting academic staff training and development, amongst others.
The university has benefited from the TETFund in the area of the staff development program. Over 70 of our staff in the University of Lagos have benefited from that, the support that we have from TETFund for them to do their PhD within and outside the country. Some of them to do their master's program within and outside the country, and also in the area of attending conferences at the local and international level.
With the scorecard yet to be marked, TETFund has sponsored both academic staff and non-academic staff on local and foreign conference with a grand total of 67,650 scholars across public tertiary institutions in Nigeria.
Another critical area of intervention is in the area of academic staff training and development. In this area too, we've excelled and we've done remarkably well. We have trained to PhD and to master's degree levels, over 30,000 lecturers from the various tertiary institutions. Our budget just for this year alone is in the region of 30 billion naira for academic staff training and development. Yet another critical area of intervention is in the area of research. In the year 2019, our budget for research was 5 billion naira. For the year 2020, it increased to 7.5 billion for the
tertiary institutions. And it's a delight that when you go to a tertiary institution, you see the milestones of TETFund all over the place. And I believe that those who run these institutions will tell you that without TETFund, things will have been a lot tougher and much more difficult with them.
If not for TETFund, Nigerian university system would have collapsed. So I believe they have done and they lived up to the expectations, up to the mandate given to them.
Only me to the thank you to the President, especially to the Minister of Education, to my VC, to even those behind the scene that made it a dream come true. I say a big thank you.
Due to TETFund intervention, the standard of our educational system, the standard of learning has increased quite a lot, and I really appreciate it.
Academically and mentally, the students of Bayero University have benefited. What do I mean by that? You can only help a student by giving the right infrastructure and the comfort for learning. So TETFund has empowered students mentally, physically, and socially by providing those comfortable environments for learning.
Daunting and challenging as this mandate might be in providing supplementary support to all public tertiary institutions in Nigeria, Board of Trustees from inception till date, and one that Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro has seen come to fruition with a 5-star rating and a model being adopted not just in Nigeria, but across Africa.
Permit me, by the way, first, to use this opportunity to appreciate my predecessors, from the late Abdul Qadir, who was the first executive secretary of ETF, and unfortunately, as it were, his successor, Mustafa Jaji too, that we lost recently. And after that, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, the current chairman of INEC.
You will recall that there was an interregnum between 2012 and 2014, and I came on board April 2014 and was there for 1 year, 10 months, and Dr. Baffa had set in for 2 years, 5 months. After 3 years, I was cleared upon approval of Mr. President.
I am proud to say, with all of you working for TETFund, we have pulled together a number of changes in the organization.
To continuously deliver appropriate and adequate intervention programs with due regard to the sensitivities of beneficiary institutions across board, the fund constantly organizes programs such as Taxpayers Forum and Stakeholders Meeting with the purpose of acknowledging its taxpayers, briefing and interacting with heads of beneficiary institutions to deliver on its policies. The process is born out of the fund's commitment to providing transparency and accountability in its dealing with the main aim of using funds accrued from the education tax for the rehabilitation, restoration, and consolidation of tertiary education in Nigeria. From small steps to giant strides, TETFund has metamorphosed as a world-class interventionist agency with its insignia boldly written in not just citadels of learning, but carved in history and engraved in the minds of many, inspiring generations to progress.
Today, TETFund is happily being reckoned with as the best intervention agency in Nigeria. I think I'm proud to associate myself with all of you that have helped us achieve this. I use this occasion to urge you to raise the bar. There is still hope for Nigeria. Let's do it right in our own cell called TETFund. And the summation will be a transformative Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's have another big round of applause for that well-packaged documentary, which tells the story of how TETFund, through improvement of education, can transform the fortunes of Nigeria, placing it among one of the dominant knowledge economies in the world. And it is possible. But we would like to hear more in the form of the next presentation that we have for this occasion. We would like to hear from our guest speaker today, who happens to be the former chairman of the Board of Trustees of TETFund. Now, the Board of Trustees is a very important organ of TETFund, because if universities say, but for TETFund, then TETFund itself would say, but for the Board of Trustees. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Musa Babayo, the Talban Katagum, as he comes up to make his presentation.
I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. The chairman of this occasion, Olorogun Dr. Sonny Kuku, distinguished scientists, a foremost industrialist, fellow of Academy of Sciences, one of Nigeria's export brands. The executive governor of Kebbi State, distinguished Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, a very good friend of the fund, one of the leading governors doing so well for the transformation of agricultural sector in our country. The chairman of the Board of Trustees of TETFund, Mutawalli Kashim Ibrahim Imam, distinguished lawyer, an industrialist, and the consummate corporate manager. Members of the Board of Trustees representing Northwest, Northeast, Southeast, South-South, North Central, and the statutory members of the board representing the Federal Ministry of Finance, the Executive Secretary of MDTE, NCC, and NUC, former members of the Board of Trustees here present, Patricia Dolly, Professor, Dr. Jamila Shuara, former Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Petroleum, and one-time Director of Tertiary Education in the Federal Ministry of Education. Distinguished senators here present, see the senator representing Bochinos, my senator, and my elder brother, Ambassador Adamu Bulkachua, representative of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, other distinguished personalities here present, the chief driver of the fund. I call him the engine room, an erudite scholar. I don't call him prof, I call him orator. I tried to reach out to the chairman of the planning committee yesterday not to allow Professor Bogoro to speak before me. Unfortunately, I was unable to connect with him. Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro, a distinguished academic, himself a fellow of Academy of Sciences, the engine room of TETFund. Since difficult and bomb. When I was appointed to lead the board, as the chairman, in the first inaugural board meeting in 2009, we clearly established a pathway. And I knew from that time that the vehicle that we had, which was the ATF Establishment Act, was structurally flawed, and something needs to be done to make it more effective and more efficient in the delivery of the core mandate areas of the fund. Those areas have been clearly enumerated by the executive secretary, but sufficient to say improvement of learning and teaching environment, library development, entrepreneurship centers, academic staff training and development were some of the key areas which we focused our attention on. But then we had a snag. We felt it was necessary for us to reform the organization itself in order to make it much more effective, much more focused, so that it will support the board of trustees and the management in the delivery of this important national duty. The Board of Trustees Committee on Appointment, Promotion, and Discipline, FED&C, was charged with that responsibility to come up with a new organogram for the consideration of the board. We focused first on the Directorate of Education Support Services. We achieve the goal of capacity building in the tertiary education segment. Corporate planning was reformed, and Department of Corporate Planning and Development was created from that. And strengthened the internal audit function, because the audit function is the most important function in any organization that is saddled with the responsibility of managing huge volume of financial resources. Not only was it strengthened, we created and approved a dual relationship for the audit function. Basically, in discharging tax fund, as it was then called, and taking cover under Section 3, subsection G of the law, 51 federal and state polytechnics nationwide. The objective, one of the best, not necessarily in Africa, but probably in the world. The first special intervention was born. Technical and vocational education equipment procurement, including rehabilitation of the laboratories in the 51 federal and state polytechnics nationwide. Because of our desire at that first inaugural board meeting to not to make ETF as a huge contract administration agency. We had earlier devolved the powers of managing projects to the benefiting institutions. Contracts were never issued, awarded ETF. That time, debt. That particular project was housed at MBTE in Kaduna. and it was successfully managed by them and closed out sometimes in 2012. Education, as we all know, is the primary tool for the development of nations. The future growth of every society largely depends on the existence of a good educational system that can meet the twin objectives of creating access and quality for its citizens, which are delivered on a sustainable manner for the benefit of the country. Nigerian government, through the instrumentality of the ETF and the TETFund now, has been working tirelessly to provide good and qualitative education for its citizens at all levels. The tertiary education sector is key and indeed critical, as it is responsible for developing citizens at earlier stages of education and developing in them those competencies and skills needed for the betterment of society. Tertiary education is also central to research and development of new knowledge, as well as being one in recent years. Among the key challenges that the tertiary education sector is facing in Nigeria is that of sustainable funding. With inadequate and sustainable funding in the sectors, it will be difficult for our tertiary institutions to be ahead or favorably compete in global ranking, which, as at today, no single Nigerian university in 2010, I wanted to say, was among the top 1,000 universities in the world. The ETF Act of 2003-2004 mandate the fund to operate as an interventionist agency at all levels of public education. That is funding educational institutions set up by the 3 tiers of government in Nigeria: the federal, states, and local government. ETF intervened in all public universities, inter-university centers, colleges of education, polytechnics, and monotechnics. At the secondary level, it intervened in all the primary schools established in the 36th state of the Federation and FCT through the state ministries of education, and all the primary schools under the supervision of the state basic education board. Clearly, these responsibilities were huge. ETF was overstretched. As its intervention, the broad nature of it, 50,000 for polytechnics and colleges of education respectively, while to fully fulfill the essence of its establishment, in a profound manner it was envisaged by the framers of the law, overstretching the available resources of the fund. State of affairs, amongst other reasons, and was effected through the Tertiary Education Trust Fund Act of 3 June 2011. Plus, challenges, a new agency creating test fund was born around all levels of government. But for the support, Senator Joy Imodi, who wouldn't have come to 3 key points today of administration. This is a brand new provision inserted section 7, subsection 3, which mandated the Board of Trustees to distribute the funds in the most important section. It's a brand new section, Honorable Minister. The President shall TETFund establishment 9. As the board under section 7 is charged with the responsibility of we made in the board. NUC Secretariat for the first time. And head of the for Section 3, subsection 4. In 2009, the total cost, the total loaded federal cost of TETFund, including the cost of administration, was 628 million naira. Staff cost alone was about 549 million. Primary schools were part of our bill. Eventually was approved. And Mr. The President shall approve the intervention. We brought in the Minister and the President into the approval process in order to safeguard the future integrity of the fund. Their intervention budget for approval and stamping. This particular provision for the fund, that has already been explained for the area development, conference attendance, research and development, project maintenance, and so on and so forth. That fund, a more benefiting institution. The capacity building institutions in the various intervention